And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Two Back Set Podcasts. I'm one of your hosts, Thomas, aka Mr. Warburg. I'm your resident Hawkeye fan. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Patrick, aka Mr. Fusion.
Representing number 3 in the nation, the Texas Longhorns, Hook 'em Horns.
Indeed, indeed. We did miss week 3. Life stuff happened, so Fusion didn't get to celebrate Texas's big win over Alabama, which was a great game. It was definitely one that was very fun to watch. So any kind of in absence, like, hey, this is what my thoughts on that game were.
No, other than the Texas defense is really good. I really love Sark's play calling. I think the problem is execution of the players, because not only did they look bad the first half, struggling offensively against Alabama, they did so against Wyoming this past Saturday. So I think he calls the right plays. I think that there's just a level of focus that's not there in the first half. And as the season goes on, they really have to tighten that up, because in a couple weeks they face Oklahoma in Dallas, and Oklahoma's been running up the score on everybody just so they can prove a point. We know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a dogfight. And if they don't come out swinging and executing offensively in the first half, it's going to be a rough day for them. But I have a feeling that they're going. I mean, just their defensive front's fierce, man, and they have really good secondary, so that defense can carry them. But at some point, you have to be focused. Like offensively, you have to be able to execute at kickoff.
Yeah, you got to play all 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, you especially with if they beat Oklahoma, they could potentially run the table.
Oh, I think that big odds-on favorite to run the table.
Yeah, they get in the Big 12 title game, they win it, they get into the playoff. They have to be able to execute in the first half. We've seen enough college football playoff to know that if you don't show up in the first half, it becomes immensely difficult in the second half, particularly like with Alabama, with the Georgia, with the Michigan. Like,
say Georgia, and with those new clock rules, with the constant clock, like.
Yep.
All of a sudden, that second half, your chances to get back in a game, they dwindle fast.
Yep. You could try to run that Big 12 style of offense, the run and gun type of thing, the RPO, but at the same time, like, Georgia likes to just run it down your throat, right? And that's going to be a problem if it's them at the end of the season. So that's something they got to work on the first half, yeah.
And how about Oklahoma? Everybody thought last year was, oh man, Venables ain't the guy. They're falling off after Riley left. And now, oh damn, they're just beating the brains out of people. Like, they got a point to prove. Like, okay.
That is them just running it to prove a point. That's what we're looking at right now. And the scary thing is that their quarterback, Gabriel, a good quarterback, but that freshman is going to be incredible over the next few years. That guy coming, I forget his name now. I can't remember his name. I wish I could look it up here. Is it Davis Bell?
You know more than me. I'm a Big Ten guy.
Jackson Arnold, I believe, is the freshman. But Dylan Gabriel is the current quarterback. But man, like, when he comes in, because by the third quarter they're up by like 45 points, and he's out there slinging it too, the freshman. So he's going to be incredible over the next few years. So look out for Oklahoma. I'm still not sold on Brent Venables being the guy over there, just because I really don't like him. But then again, I think Lincoln Riley was greatly overhyped coming in, taking over for Bob Stoops. He's done a good job at USC. I just see him not being that monster.
I still need to see
his
team have a defense.
Yep, that's the biggest thing, man. He can recruit the hell out of his offensive players, but like he has yet to put it together defensively, both at Oklahoma, consistently at Oklahoma, and now at USC. We're kind of like, when's this going to happen for you? But he can pay a shit ton of NIL for offensive players. But I think Venables is going to be all right at Oklahoma. Like, I don't think, is he long term? Still don't know. I need another year or two to see it, to be worried, because I think that game in a couple weeks is going to be a major litmus test for what Oklahoma really is. Just like what's coming up this week, and we're going to talk about it, is that Colorado-Oregon game. That is their major litmus test, going against like top tier competition. So yeah,
absolutely agree. So for my side, obviously, as I said in the intro, I'm a Hawkeye. So obviously after week 2, they win the Cy-Hawk game. Pretty by the numbers. El Assico, which is the Iowa, I believe it was an Iowa State student blog, Wide Right Natty Light, which is an excellent fan blog name, by the way. They coined the term El Assico years ago because that game is such a shit show. Because you got all these emotions. Because I think per capita, Iowa and Iowa State, when that game happens, they have, in the terms of in-state rivalries, there are got to be 150 kids combined between the teams that are from the state of Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and they're maybe overcompensating, right? It's early in the season too, so like the freshmen will make mistakes. The underclassmen just maybe the communication is not all the way there yet on all three levels. And you saw it on both teams, especially with Iowa State because of all the gambling stuff. They are an incredibly young team. That's why I don't
Yep.
think Matt Campbell's in trouble because, I mean, nobody 2 months ago, I don't think he thought Deckers would be done for life. You know,
Yeah.
like his starting running back maybe just fucked away his chance at the NFL, and he was very good. You know,
Right.
like there went half their not just half, there went most of their offensive production coming back, and for hopefully this year, and now you got to start over. Got some talented guys as freshmen, but much like Iowa, they go 3-star kind of guys. It's a developmental program. You can't just take that hit and expect to win.
Right.
Now, I would be on the lookout for Iowa State next year because all of a sudden all these guys are getting a lot of reps very early in their careers that maybe otherwise wouldn't have. And will that have a knock-on effect next year with Iowa State where they kind of punch above their weight a little bit? Kind of like Campbell a few years ago when he had that, was that the Fiesta Bowl run? The COVID year? Yeah. Like, do they have a year like that in them where all of a sudden now they're freshmen turn sophomores and juniors are, hey, we're pretty good now. We'll have to see what happens there. But so Iowa beats Iowa State, and then they actually blow a team out, which I can't remember the last time I saw Iowa beat a team out, at least non-conference.
Mm.
A couple of years ago, they beat Maryland, and they beat them bad. Like, that was
Yeah.
awful. Like, it was over by the first quarter. It was almost 35. Wasn't it 35-0 at halftime or something? It was
something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
and that's an Iowa box score. You were like, wait, Iowa did that? But that was back when Iowa could score the football. Got to remember, in 2020 and 2021, they averaged 30 and 29 points a game. Like, they could actually score back then. You know, and Tyler Goodson was a monster in space and showed up there. But this is the first time, as far back as I can remember, in quite some time, you're going back into the Stanley years here, where they had a team that was overmatched and they showed it. Like, no, we can go run the ball down these guys' throats. They averaged almost 7 yards per carry. Like, they were just constantly ripping off first down runs. And they were going 5, 6 deep at the running back position just because they could, but also because they had to. So they lost Luke Lachey. He broke his ankle, had surgery. Apparently it was a clean break, which will mean hopefully a short surgery recovery. So either if he decides to come back to play, he can be in spring ball. He won't miss any off-season practices. You know, he'll be right back in it, and he's an experienced player, so shouldn't be a missing time issue. Or does he take the opportunity to look at the NFL? Because there are going to be teams interested because he can block, he can run. He's basically a slightly bigger TJ Hawkinson as far as how I've seen him run routes. Like, there were some routes down the seam where you're like, yeah, that's George Kittle, that's TJ Hawkinson, that's Noah Fant, and he can block.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be teams that want him, and I would never begrudge a guy going to get paid. It just sucks that if that happens, his Hawkeye career would end on an injury. That definitely sucks.
The combine is late February, right? Usually early March or late February.
I think it's after President's Day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So
Yeah.
late February. So you're talking about roughly 5 months for him for recovery.
Yeah.
If it's a clean break, he should be fine. If
Everyone was saying if he wanted to, if he wasn't worried about the red shirt, he could come back for the bowl, maybe.
They didn't have to put any screws or rods?
Nope. Apparently, it was a completely clean break, and the surgery went great. And obviously, it's too early to say because, you know, I've had stomach surgeries. Setbacks happen, but it sounds like the recovery should be not like extremely. He's done for the regular season for here. But if he wants to come back and play and doesn't care about the red shirt, he could by the bowl, is what a few people around the program have said. But they all know that's not happening. It's just that's the recovery timeline.
Sure.
So
he'll be ready. He'll be ready for the combine. Well, you'll. Let me put it like this: if he's recovered, if it's a clean break, and they're saying that he could technically make it back by
assuming no setbacks and everything goes great. Yeah.
Let's just say that's late December. That's 3 months.
He could be 100% by combine time.
Yeah. If that's the case, like if they're saying he could play in a bowl game, then combine time he should be 100%. So you'll have an idea if he doesn't participate in the bowl game, then I think that he's
and
more
also
than likely
like I said if he wants to come back, the complication is he played in 3 games. If you play in a 4th, bye medical red shirt, right? And I don't know how that will happen. Like say Iowa gets to Indy, all of a sudden we have an extra game because it's a percentage thing. It's not total number of games. I think it's like 30% of the season or something. And if you only play 10 games, there's 3. But if you get up into the, are you playing 13 games, then that shifts. You can play 4 technically. I just don't think he would even risk coming back not 100% on an ankle for a bowl game, not
The
having played in
only
months.
the only way I could see that happening is if Iowa made the playoff.
Yeah,
That
and
would be
I
the only
just
way.
and even still, the backups look pretty good. Like the third deep, the fourth deep caught passes, right? Like people were going off on Brian Ferentz about running up the score, but I'm like, well, number one, do you not want the backups to score? Like, do you just want them to knee the ball out with 6 minutes
Know the
to go?
ball, yeah,
Like
yeah.
Deacon Hill is Deacon Hill is a vast upgraded backup to what we had last year. So you want to get him reps, right? You want to get your backups rep. You've got injuries now, so those guys need reps,
Yep.
right? Caleb Johnson and Jazzy Patterson both out for the Penn State game at running back position. That's your running
That's
back
tough.
1-2. Though a running back 3 was like competing for the second spots. Like that's not a huge drop off, but it's the behind him that's like, okay, now we're getting into legacy walk on kind of territory. That's
Sure.
scary. That's almost airbag territory. Do you remember those years? The angry Iowa running back hating God, and I'm knocking on wood, where we lost like 5 running backs in a season. It was bonkers. Just like the flukiest of shit. Nobody even hitting people. Just go down popping ACLs like it's their job. It's crazy. We're not there yet, but it was alarming. Especially this week's injury report is like, oh shit, we're out a lot of dudes. But so is Penn State. So I will get into that game in a little bit. But like Deacon Hill, I think he threw for a touchdown. Yeah,
He's the what, the
and
six
he's
six,
the Big
two
Ben
hundred
like
seventy
dude.
pound.
He's huge. It was like
Yeah,
I'd rather get him some reps because who knows if Caleb can stay in a game 100%. Like against a really great team that's gonna hit him with that leg, you gotta be confident in your backup.
sure.
And I think they're getting there with Hill because he was their number 2 all of camp and is getting reps. Like I just think we're in a better spot backup than we were for the last couple of years. And I'm okay with him running up the score. It's like an overmatched opponent. We're paying them anyway. Get the reps in. Go to work.
So like for Texas, the first couple games of the season, being able to have a comfortable lead, they didn't run up their scores, right? But he was comfortable enough to where they can start inserting the freshmen and the backups early on in both of those games. I mean, I'm sorry, in that Rice game. Let me correct myself. In that Rice game, getting the freshmen and the backups in was crucial because you know how deep Alabama is, and late in the game, you have to have fresh legs, right? And bringing those guys in throughout the first half and in the third quarter is crucial for the fourth quarter, and that really helped out because like Texas has really great freshmen both on the defensive front and at linebacker, and they were able to get reps against Rice that way. And Anthony Hill became the starting, outside linebacker. The freshman, the 5-star freshman coming in. He didn't start the first game, and then he started against Alabama because he had a great game coming off the bench, right? I think that's crucial. And I know we talked about like Oklahoma running up the score. It's a little different when you watch, and those guys are obviously running up the score to help to pad their ranking. We know what they're doing, but still, it matters to get those freshmen in there. It really does. It plays an important role when you get to conference play. And when you guys, like Iowa, getting those running backs in, getting reps in, it's crucial for them because now that they have in-game experience, hey, all it takes is one of those guys to light it up against Penn State, and things can change pretty quickly.
And that I
I
I'm not predicting it, but Iowa has gone in unranked and beaten top 5 Penn State at home before
sure, sure,
in a whiteout
sure,
game. It's happened.
sure.
But that
I know.
2009 team was vastly underrated coming into the season and had multiple dudes who had long, very successful NFL careers on
Yeah,
both sides of the ball. Like they had some dudes. That was Brian Bulaga. That was Adrian Claiborne, Pat Anger, Tyler Sash, and Brett Greenwood. That was that like Micah Hyde was on that team. That team was fucking loaded with dudes.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think we're that loaded. Then again, we didn't all think that back then either. It's
Sure.
not impossible. I'm not
Yeah.
predicting it because of the injuries and K's not 100%, but it's certainly going to be an interesting game. But it may be one of the least interesting we have in our pick'em. But we got some other games to talk about, especially stuff that happened week 3. One big one, and that was the Colorado State game. That was a double OT game. I believe it was the highest rated. It had like 9.3 million views
Yep.
per one of
Yep.
ESPN's top 5 all time. So, Fusion, what were your thoughts on that game?
Obviously, let's talk about the big thing. I forget his first name, but Blackburn, the safety, the defensive back from Colorado State. That was obviously a polarizing play. If you're an old school knucklehead, you're gonna say that's football. If you look at just like the idea of like player safety, what we know about concussions and injuries, all that stuff, the, and just the rules, whether it be from 30 years ago or the rules today, either way, that was a fucking illegal hit.
Yeah, it was
The
very
ball
late
was
hit.
out, the ball was out of play. Travis Hunter was being forced out of bounds to just shoulder him like that well after the play ended, and it wasn't even like there wasn't going to be a contested reception. Like there was no way that was a contest. Like it just wasn't it wasn't an actual play. He just waited till he was going out of bounds and just shouldered him, lacerated his liver. Right, it was his
Yeah,
liver, not his spleen. Yeah. So Travis Hunter's expected to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. Crappy play. But the thing is as I watched that game, I noticed that Norville was really overlooking, like not even addressing it, but a lot of his players were taking cheap shots during the game against Colorado. And so for him to go out there and play like the I'm better than you to Dion throughout the week and all that stuff, I will say this though. I thought it was going to be a blowout after he was caught talking shit about Dion personally and talking about his mom or whatever. I thought Dion was going to run up like 80 points on this guy, right, just to prove a point. I will say this: Colorado State came out and they gave him a game. You're talking about
and they
double
should have gone for
overtime.
2.
Yeah, they should have gone for two. That was really dumb on their part. That being said, I think a lot of people that were Dion detractors are now gaining some respect for him because how he addressed the intensity during the game, obviously the adjustments they made both offensive line and defensively in the second half to make sure that they stay competitive throughout the game. All of those things, as well as how he handled the Travis Hunter Blackburn situation afterwards over the past couple of days, like immediately after the game, during the game, after, and then days after, how he's addressed it. I think Coach Prime has handled it with class. I know people don't like the flashiness about him, but like the idea of like putting in that whole showboating of the game, that's always been his style. If you've known Deion Sanders, he's been doing it since Florida State, 40 years ago. I'm not shocked to see this at all. Like, hey, they look like a good team. It was a good game for them to see what happens when you play down to your opponent, because I really do think as much as people can give Colorado State credit, and I give them that, I think that Colorado in the first half played down to Colorado State. And that's me thinking that, because I look at that roster for Colorado State and I don't exactly see a lot of NFL talent on it. I may be wrong, but I there were very few
That
names that I knew.
defensive end, that dude's playing on a Sunday.
Oh, that one guy, yeah. I
He
know who you're
wrecked
talking
their
about.
offensive line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like for me, Colorado also had a guy try to poke the eyes out of a Colorado State player.
Well,
Like,
that was the quarterback. Shadur, that was after a bad hit though. That was after a bad
and I
hit.
don't give that
So,
defensive end his hit, like his personal fouls there at the end. Those weren't dirty plays. Like he was trying to grab the guy's shoulder pad, got the face mask right. Like that play happens. He's going across his body, and he
sure.
was a step late on a quarterback hit. That
Yeah.
happens all the time, right? Like, and what like it was just how his momentum was taking him. Didn't seem dirty. He didn't like pick him up and jump on him, right? Like just took him down. Like, but the one hit for sure. And I don't know. It just seems like it was a very undisciplined game on both sides. There was how
No,
many
and
personal fouls on both sides?
there
It
was
was
a lot of
crazy.
penalties. Yeah.
That was definitely like what I was saying about Iowa State. That was that game, but on a much bigger stage. Like you
Sure.
got a lot of undisciplined guys in terms of early in the season. They're still, especially because of all the transfers. Like they're still figuring the system out, figuring each other out in a live action, setting, and they're going against guys they don't know. Like in a conference game, like Iowa and Iowa State, we see each other all the time. Colorado State don't all the time, especially with all these new faces.
Right.
And it's an incredibly high profile moment for all of their careers. It's probably the biggest game in terms of eyeballs on them any of them have played.
Yeah.
Like the emotions of that are going to make most college age kids very undisciplined. So I would say there was definitely a couple dirty plays, but the rest was just undisciplined amateurs because that's what
Well,
they are.
like you mentioned this, 70 guys transferred into Colorado. They're
And
still trying
Colorado
to
State
figure.
had like 50.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was a lot.
there's a lot for those teams to figure out, right? Because
Hmm.
they come in a couple months, maybe a few months, 2 or 3 months, and they're still trying to figure things out. A lot of these kids were over at Jackson State for Colorado, and then they're having to move all the way, westward to Jackson State to Colorado. So I'm sure the culture shock is there to being in Boulder, right? Let's talk about
Yeah,
that
that's a
first off.
very different
You,
place to be.
and a lot of these kids in both
Boulder's cool
schools,
though. I like Boulder, but
Boulder's it's a cool little town. Um, but then getting used to the elevations, the other thing for both schools, players at both schools. So there's a lot of little elements you have to look at on top of, and you mentioned this. This was like the biggest event. And the thing is that for Colorado, if they beat Oregon this weekend, that game next week against USC, that's going to be like a fucking red carpet show. It's going
yeah,
to
it's
be
gonna be
like
nuts.
I think somebody put it best was it's going to be like the Source Awards. It's going to be a who's who of culture, that's going to be showing up to like a red carpet event because just watching the Colorado State game was just like, holy shit, who's there? Like, Little Wayne's there. Like you just look at all the people, the athletes,
Yeah,
all the celebrities and athletes that were on the sideline for Colorado. It's going to be crazy for USC because that's going to be in LA. So it's just first they've got to. This is their prove 'em game. This is
it
but the
definitely.
good. This thing about Colorado was versus Colorado State before Norvell, before Dion. That was a very heated rivalry. It was
Hmm.
one of those low key secondary rivalry games that you liked watching every season. Trust me, I've watched plenty of those Colorado State and Colorado State games over the years because they're fun, just like Alabama Auburn without that they're not as high profile.
Yeah,
That's the
definitely
main
a
thing.
regional rivalry, and then all of a sudden it's a national one. Like
Yep.
that happened very quickly.
It's like BYU Utah is what I could think
Yeah,
of. Like
like
another one
yeah,
of those.
was that the one that the Holy War? No, which one's Holy
Yes.
War?
That's BYU Utah,
It is.
right?
Yeah, I knew it was
Yeah.
BYU.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
BYU
BYU
Utah.
Utah. Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Because some
Like,
people think that Utah State because they always play up, but Utah is at a different level, and
oh yeah,
BYU they have their ups and downs, but whenever they face Utah, they get pretty
yeah,
intense. And this is one of those games as well. So you know what, man, it was a great showing. Like I enjoyed the game. Got
yeah.
to
And you
stay
got
up
to
till
know
like
ESPN's
1:30.
happy.
Oh yeah, 9 million people watched that
Yeah,
game versus Oklahoma. I mean, I'm sorry, Alabama Texas was like what 9, so it did better on ESPN than the ABC game did the week before with Texas
which is
and
crazy because
Alabama.
that's not OTA,
No,
and
that's
it was
crazy,
after
man.
dark. It didn't
Right,
get over to what 1 a.m.
1
Central.
a.m. Like yep,
It was
1 a.m.
brutal, but everybody watched it. That's what a
Hey
great
man,
finish will do.
yep. And so that's what you look for in college football. You want that. I really like what Dion's doing over there. It was a good work through adversity, take a moment the next day, the next week, getting ready for a major opponent with Bo Nix coming, they're going out to Oregon. Like they're gonna have to face Bo Nix, go into that stadium where it's going to be intense. Like there's a lot there that they can take from last week's game and learn from it.
Hmm.
There's a lot to get them ready. And this is going to be the test, man, because if they go out and Oregon blows the doors off of them, it's like, okay, they're not okay. But if it's a close game and Oregon wins, I still think that people are still going to be looking at Colorado as okay. That's they have a lot of athletes that are. I mean, they're still an unknown team to a degree. So this is a big game, man. I'm really excited for Oregon, Colorado. I really am.
Should be a
That's
great game. And that's
yeah,
actually one of our pick'em games, which is our weekly
yes,
5 game pick'em pool that we do. Fusion is actually currently our leader in that pool. I believe you've only missed 2 games.
2 games.
And I've missed, I think, 4 or 5. So you're in first place. So Colorado, Oregon. For me, the key of that game is going to come down to Colorado's offensive line. They're giving up a lot of pressure to Sanders, like a lot.
Right,
I want to say
right.
it's like 11.5 pressures per game so far,
Think
which
so.
is
Yeah,
quite a bit. And once you start getting into those top end teams, I mean, they were playing Nebraska, an overrated TCU, and Colorado State. Now you're getting to Oregon. Like they got dudes on their line and in their front seven, and you're giving up that many pressures. That's that's kind of alarming, and it's definitely the reason I believe they 21-point underdogs or something like that. Didn't I
oh
see
yeah,
that they
they're
were
tw-
three
they were they
touchdown
were
dogs?
they were 21 and a half last I checked.
Yeah, like that's the reason is because their line has looked suspect. Even though Sanders
Yeah.
has played great, greatness only extends so far if you're constantly under pressure. Eventually, something will break. A pick six, a quick turnover, something's going to break down in your offense. And that's why I'm going Oregon. But what about you?
I got to go Oregon, man. They have a Heisman hopeful in Bo Nix at quarterback. They have skill position players that are dynamic. They have a lot of speed, both offense and defense. I have to take Oregon on this one, man. Now, like I said, this is a proven game. I I'm not going to say I had low expectations for Colorado coming in because I really didn't. That first game, what I saw was they were very well coached against TCU. That second game against Nebraska, I think there was a little bit of a hangover there. And then I think Colorado, they thought they were going to roll on them. And there's a lot of, so what I'm seeing is a little bit of a shaky, we're getting shakier with the discipline of the coaching over the past 2 weeks, right? If they come out and they really hold their own against Oregon, it will prove to me that Dion and his coaching staff are like they run a real tight ship over there. That will prove that to me. That being said, I just looked. Oregon is at 20 points. So it was 21 and a half yesterday. So closing a little bit. So there's, I guess people are throwing, a little bit more money than on Colorado. I'm going to say Oregon wins. We don't talk about covering on the lines here, but I'm going to say Oregon wins. I just want a really fun game.
Yeah.
I really want this to be a fun game, like a good, intense game to where at the fourth quarter, neither team is blowing the other out. So,
Yep.
yeah.
That game
Oregon.
is a 2:30 kick on
Yep.
ABC. Another
Yep.
OTA game in the 2:30 window that I'm definitely keeping an eye on is number 15 Ole Miss at number 13 Alabama. For my money, Alabama, they don't look like last few years Alabama. Right?
No.
Like they're unsettled at the quarterback position, which is of course, I mean, look at the Pac-12. They've got all the great QBs, like across the country. Besides maybe Penn State's Drew Aller, and that other than that, he didn't look that great against Illinois. So like they don't have a great QB. Their defense gave up a lot of big plays to Texas. They they struggled with USF. Yeah, it was USF. Road game after a big game, how much is it as a hangover off that loss? You would hope for a better bounce back though. So you wonder, ranked team coming in, are they going to pick up their second loss? And especially, Milrose back at the quarterback position, but it's not impossible for them to find it again. I believe it was Coker back in 15. Was it 15? What year was he the QB that they won? Either way, like he got benched week 2 for an attitude issue or something, and he comes back in and they run the table, right? And then they win the championship. So it's not impossible. I just don't see that with this year's Alabama team. They don't have that overwhelming talent at the outside that will break up any defense.
See, here's the thing we have to look at with Alabama. Over the last actually, let me correct myself. Over the last 4 years, they've been one of the top 3 recruiting classes in the country. The last 3 years, they had, 2 of those, they were the top recruiting class in the country, right? These guys there are athletes and there are players out there. Nick Saban, for a very long time, we thought can put it all together for these guys, make them professionals, right? What is the problem this year? Is it the defensive coaching? Is it the lack of the quarterback? Because as much as we don't like, I mean, we say that Jalen Milroe has struggles, they've won with shaky quarterbacks in the past, right?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it the fact that they're just is Saban losing his touch? I know people want to create that sensational headline. Is Saban finally losing his touch? I don't think it's that. I think they're in a bit of a limbo right now.
Yeah, I think they're in a period where they've got a lot of talented guys. Like Caden Proctor's going to be an
Yep.
an NFL tackle. He's a true
Yep.
freshman right now that's getting beat up because
Yep.
he's getting thrown to the sharks right now.
Yep.
Sink or swim, and he'll
It didn't
eventually
help.
swim.
Yep.
But it just right now, your left tackle's not locked in 100% dominating every snap, which is what you need.
And that offensive line had a lot of struggles last year.
Yeah.
A lot of struggle. That was their weakest point coming into this season, even though he was going to be their starting left tackle, the freshman, true freshman. They were a very underperforming offensive line last year.
Mm-hmm. And that to
They
me
don't
seems
have
like
a
their
lot of
Achilles heel.
they don't have a lot of speed in the secondary. That's obvious too. They have a lot of speed at running back, and they need to figure out how to make that work in their favor.
Yeah. And against Ole Miss, I just see them picking up that loss number 2. And then I mean, but again, that's the first loss SEC for them, so everything's still on the table in terms of conference play. But you wonder with that fan base, what's going to happen when they pick up a second loss, and what happens when they're totally on the outside looking, like not even looking in. The playoffs over, you know. That's going to be some weird conversations if they do indeed pick up that second loss. So, but what about you? What are you thinking of this game? What's your pick?
Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, is leading the team in passing yards, and rushing. We have yet to see Quinshon Judkins, the running back, who ran for 1,500 yards last year. Really, and I know he's been injured. He hasn't really had a chance to really break out. I think offensively they have a little too much, and I agree. I think Alabama loses their second game. I think this is that game where, and I think this is going to have people panicking about Alabama. It's just circumstances,
Yeah,
man.
it's just the
It's just
ebb and flow of
circumstances,
football. Like
you know.
nobody stays on top that far forever.
And the other thing is, this is what we're going to be looking at the SEC next year with Oklahoma and Texas going in. They're not like cakewalks anymore. Texas has worked their asses off to get back where they are, where they're hopefully at now, and can sustain that into next year. Oklahoma is just Oklahoma. Like, even if Brett Venables doesn't happen to be the guy, they're not going to be an awful program. So they're coming in. It's There's just so much parity in the SEC now
Hmm.
that you can't just say Alabama's going to run the table every single year now, because there are a lot of good teams in the SEC. Um, what interests me is, like, hey, maybe I'm hoping to see what happens with Auburn next year, because I think that they're going to spend some money to really bring things back up over there. But I think Alabama, they're okay. So I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine. The number one high school quarterback for next year, the 25 class, not the 24, but 25. He's supposed to be the 6'5", 220-pound kid that's supposed to be able to be like the best dual threat in a very long time. Reminds people of like Cam Newton. Um, he's actually being fought over by Colorado and Alabama right now. And I think Nick Saban's going to make sure that they pull out all the stops and bring this guy in 25, because if they're going to struggle this year, they're going to try to get a transfer next year. A quarterback that maybe want to get out, like maybe a Malik Murphy at Texas, or if Quinn Ewers says, I'm going to stay another year, Arch Manning says, screw it, I'm not going to wait, I'm going to get out, come to Alabama. Like, I think Alabama's going to pull it out, pull something out of their hat to make sure that they have a quarterback next year. Talking about this year, it's going to be rough, man. It's going to be rough, and
Like
that's
10,
just the
like
thing.
10, 11 wins is rough. Like,
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, they could still end up running the table, be 10-3 at the end, or have another loss and end up 9 and
yeah,
3,
like they could,
right?
and
And
they could only have the one loss before the championship game. Like
yep,
that's entirely possible.
yep.
So it's not like everything's off the table. It's
And
just
this may be their only SEC loss.
potentially, yeah. Looking like that's not impossible.
No,
And I just for where they're at, where you just kind of get the sense of the program, I'm going with Ole Miss as well, picking up
sure.
the road win. One of my few. Well, I guess I'm trying to think. Wait, what did I all pick? Sorry, we've got 5 games. So we got. What do you want to go next? You want to do Texas Baylor? That's an easy pick. Obviously
Let's
Texas.
Obviously Texas there. I think Baylor. I hope the
Should we talk
Texas
about the
offense.
Big 12 a little bit?
Eh, it's a bit of a disaster, man,
They're
because
beyond
to
those two
start,
top teams. Oh,
yeah.
it is top heavy.
Which is funny because they're leaving at the end of the season for
Yeah,
the SEC, and they're bringing in schools. It's going to be weird because coming into next season, is Colorado immediately the top team in the Big 12
assuming they
next year?
don't turn over the roster again, you got to imagine.
Like, because Dion's going to make sure they spend a ton of NIL money, right,
And
to
they're going
get
to
some of
have
the
a ton
best.
to spend.
They're going to have a fuck ton to spend. Um, they may have one of the best recruiting classes in the country, like top 3 or 4. Do you say that, depending on how they end up this season, is Colorado the best team in the
It's
Big 12
probably
next
them in
year?
Kansas State,
Yeah.
maybe TCU in terms of roster
Oh,
talent, like at the
T-
jump.
TCU traditionally doesn't have a top recruiting class, so they're always kind of an unknown until they put the
Yeah,
you know
they're a
put the
developmental
put
program, one of the
yeah
better
until they put
ones.
the
Yeah,
until the cleats hit the field and they go out there and start beating people. They're always kind of like the, hey, but you can't
they're in
dismiss
that
them
position,
since,
kind of Iowa's in of like, well,
yeah.
they'll be competitive. but like not picked to win.
No, but Iowa has top 10, top 12 recruiting classes.
Nope, barely break the
I mean,
30s.
are you sure about
Nope,
that?
I'm
Okay.
dead serious. Now it's been,
Okay.
and honestly, in terms of adjusted for production, once they get the win the
Once they
guys,
get there, okay.
yes,
Okay.
they way outperform their rankings, but they
Sure.
hardly ever break out of the 30s.
Sure.
Like I think we were, if we'd have kept Proctor, I think that would have been Kirk's first top 25 class, but we
Okay, that's
didn't.
fair.
And that's what makes me worry about that huge 6'8" 4-star we got, who
Yeah.
just moved back to Iowa. I know he's a lifelong Hawkeye fan, but so was Proctor. Like Colorado wants him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you gotta wonder. Now I don't want to like jinx anything because it certainly seems like he's more. Now I'm not even gonna take visits. I'm coming to Iowa kind of kid. But that with the NIL Wild West, it's still always out there. And like you mentioned, Colorado's going to spend money. It's going to be
Yes.
their, hey, we're coming home. They got all
Yep.
the energy off this season. You got Dion. Like,
They've got to replace his son because his son's obviously going into the
oh,
NFL
for
draft.
sure.
He's a top 10 pick at this point, right?
For
Based off
sure.
of hype.
Yeah, for right now,
So
yeah.
they're going to have to replace Shador Sanders at quarterback. So they're going to spend money. I really think, okay, let me correct myself then about that. So um I think Colorado, you have to think about Colorado probably possibly being the best team in the Big 12 next year.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me.
Just because it's not very fun to watch the Big 12 outside of Texas and Oklahoma right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, you got,
It's kind
yeah.
of
Like we brought it up at the top, Iowa State got dealt like the shittiest hand possible beyond
yeah,
mass injuries. Like, guys' careers are done because they made stupid mistakes. And it just hit them really hard in very key positions. So there
right.
goes the middle of your conference, one of your middle teams in your conference. Now they're a bottom feeder right now because they just don't have the guys to go win games. They're losing again. Ohio's a good team. I don't want to say like Ohio would beat the brains out of Western Michigan too. Like Western Michigan's a bad team. What Iowa played, but Iowa's not losing to Ohio. Like they just couldn't
T
overcome that.
yeah, Oklahoma I'm sorry, don't know why I said Oklahoma. TCU, Colorado, maybe K-State.
Yeah,
Oklahoma State, maybe
if they can
Oklahoma
turn
State
around,
did
they looked
they did
awful.
they
Iowa
did. I
State's
kind
favored. If
of
you'd have told me that coming into the season, off the suspensions, that Iowa State would be favored against Oklahoma State, I'd
Oklahoma
wonder, holy
State.
shit, are we talking Rocco Becht for the Heisman? Like, but instead it's Oklahoma. Just like what who did we say fell off a cliff? Oh, it was right in the pre-show. Somebody fell off a cliff. We were talking. Oh, Pitt, right? Pitt fell off a
Yeah.
cliff. Oklahoma State is just nosediving off the cliff right now. Like,
Yeah.
what are they doing?
I mean, the conference was theirs to be had with Oklahoma leaving, right? And Texas, and they're not seizing the
They're
opportunity.
just
So
not
that's
competitive at all.
I think the other one is though the other disappointing one is U of H. They're Dana Hogerson's just a horrible coach. Like I've never been a fan of his, and he's just
That's one
uh,
some of those incoming teams, the newer teams to the Big 12. I'm like, okay, one of those teams is going to make a run at LeVar Woods from Iowa.
yeah.
One of them is going to do it because if we don't give him a bump or like, hey, you're the coach in waiting, this is Kirk's last season, right, for next year, LeVar's gone and he's going to be a head coach somewhere and absolutely kill it.
So
That
that
dude
I
just
mean,
screams head coach.
well, Tillman Fertitta has the money to pay for someone to come to U of H. They've traditionally done that, bringing in a coach that was kind of like outside of like the major mainstream like list and really cultivated them, and then they go somewhere else. Now, could he always go back to Iowa? Yeah, that's possible, but like, I don't think you should lose. You shouldn't lose him
I
because of
hope we
friends
don't
wanting.
because like
Oh,
everyone in the program's like, dude, this dude's fucking head coach. Like he could be a head
yeah,
coach right now and win a
right
lot of
now,
games.
yeah,
Like he wants to start that part of his career. It sounds like
yep.
somebody's gonna make a big rhyme running him this offseason because
So
our special teams are still really fucking good.
yeah, Texas Tech is bad. Baylor's bad. We've already talked plenty about Iowa State. Cincinnati's yeah, man. It looks like it's TCU, Kansas State, and Colorado are the top three teams next year.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just saying, based off of like, I have a lot of confidence in in Deion Sanders right now for what he's doing now. They could shit the bed against Oregon, shit the bed the week after against USC, and then it'll change my outlook. But based off of how I see like they're competitive and they're entertaining, and he can bring in recruits. I think that they're going to be good next year. So I really see this as Colorado, TCU, and Kansas State's
For sure.
conference for a
Speaking of
while.
Colorado, I wanted to bring this up.
Yeah,
It struck me watching the game and looking at both teams' schedules because Iowa's probably going to lose one, maybe two games. But because of
sure.
the Big Ten pecking order with the Big East, like we're the fourth team that's going to get like picked for a bowl game generally between Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and then probably Iowa. Colorado is going to maybe lose what, two or three games. I wonder, like,
They,
you imagine the angles of if you're trying to market this. Colorado versus Iowa. You got Coach Prime versus the Dean of College Football, Kirk Ferentz. Like two programs that are very opposed to each other in terms of
yeah,
style, polar
polar
opposites in
opposites.
terms of play and style.
Great, great UDs for both
Yeah,
schools, by
like
the way.
it's they're both like it's a different black and gold, right? Like and Iowa's more on the well, it is a yellow. We just call it gold versus
Yeah,
like true gold with Colorado. Like and they're kind of one middle America teams kind of thing in terms of like where their markets are. Like I could absolutely see those two teams ending up in a bowl game across from each other.
that would be really fun. Now let me say this: Colorado's got Oregon, then USC.
Yeah,
They get a break with Arizona
I
State,
think
and
they're
then
going to be more
Stanford.
competitive with USC because USC's defense is dog shit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they have 2 weeks off with Arizona State and Stanford, right? But then they come back and they face UCLA, Oregon
UCLA's tough.
State, Oregon State, and then 2 weeks later they close out the season with Washington State, then Utah.
Yeah, like
That is a
that's hard.
murderer's row for Colorado. Now, if Dion comes out of that with just 2 losses, I will
He's
give
coach of
that
the year
man.
if they get two
Yeah,
losses.
yeah. Out of
He's
all
national
that,
coach of the
yeah.
year. Book it.
Oh man, I
I
mean
don't
that
think it's
is like
likely, but like it just when I saw the schedule, I was like, oh man, if that happens, you're talking
so.
guaranteed their rankings in the 10 to 15
Yeah,
minimum. And Iowa, if we only lose to Penn State and then a Big Ten title game, that's two. We're probably also in that same range. And we'd be lower in the pecking order just because of the Big Ten. Like maybe we'd go Rose Bowl, but like who knows if they, how that would all end up.
well, so
That was just where
after
my head went watching the game. I
you
was like, oh,
lose,
that'd be
you
cool.
lose, you lose to Penn State this week. How is it? How do you feel? I mean, you said 2 losses. Where do you see them
Big
losing
Ten
again?
championship.
Because Big Ten, good call. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right.
And
You're right.
honestly, watching the games, I'm like, okay, we'd be a little more competitive with Michigan this year, so far.
Yeah,
And you got to wonder, not having Harbaugh on the sideline during game days, is that affecting things? I'm not going to say we'd beat them, but like in terms of style of play, we match up more with Michigan than the other two,
yeah.
and we have actual competent quarterback play this time, so it'd be
We won't talk
possible.
about it in detail, but Michigan State's having a horrible, horrible week.
Oh my gosh! And
Oh
then
man,
they drew night game at Kinnick. Oof,
yep. I
they're
feel
gonna
bad.
get
I feel bad.
destroyed.
I feel bad for those kids in Michigan State right now.
And
It's going to be
because
tough.
like, and that's another one. It's like they're gonna lose a lot of dudes.
Yeah,
Because that's for their upperclassmen. That's their second coach, and whoever they hire going to be their third coach of their career.
yep.
Like that's tough, and they're going to get because of the firing situation, they'll be one-time exemption transfer. Go wherever you want. That's going to further muddy the waters in terms of the transfer market too. Because a very high-profile Big Ten program losing talent, going to be a lot of transfers floating around.
Watch Nebraska pick up a lot of those kids too.
Wouldn't shock me.
Like I can see it happening because Nebraska, Matt Rule, you like the guy, you want to cheer for him. He obviously has roster deficiencies. He needs more talent, and I know they're going to go out and spend the money in NIL to get it. But I wouldn't be shocked if you see several Michigan State players going to Nebraska next year.
Yep, wouldn't shock me at all.
But that would be a fun game. That would be a fun game, Thomas, to see to see Iowa and Colorado duke it out.
Because
That would
it'd
be a
be
fun.
so like
Polar opposites, yeah.
it'd be honestly not unlike, and obviously that was a very differently coached team. I'm not saying like the end result would be this way, but like the Holiday Bowl, Iowa USC, that was just a bizarre viewing experience.
Right.
In that first quarter before Iowa kind of blew the game open, which was crazy that happened. Like we're fucking pulling Tristan Wirfs out there and just decleating dudes on reverses. It was awesome. Maybe the best game Brian Ferentz has called in his career, including the blowout of Ohio State. But like that kind of was because they play like crazy Pac-12, spread it out, go wild kind of offense versus Iowa's very buttoned up. It's 4-3 or our kind of nickel package, and everybody stays home. We're not fucking around. Like, very different styles. Plus, then Dion versus Kirk. Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
wild to think about. I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be
No, but
cool.
that would be an interesting matchup.
That'd be a very
So
cool postseason non playoff kind of game.
yeah. So let's go back to the picks here.
Yep.
Obviously, you brought up Texas Baylor. The next one is Iowa Penn State. I
Yep.
think we're both in agreement here. It's going to be Penn State for this one.
Yeah, this one, my heart says Iowa's done it before,
Yeah.
2009. It's even happened more recently. Like we've won the last 2 games against really good Penn State teams. But there's also been massive blowouts at Penn State. I want to say it was 2016. We had 2 linemen go down. One guy broke a leg. The other guy, I think, tore a ligament of some kind. And it was over by the first quarter. Because they both went down, like, immediately. So, like, there went the running game, the passing game. Couldn't move the ball at all. And that was James Vandenberg, I believe. And he was not he was Stanley light, which is not very good. Because Stanley, what made him great was the fact that he could just fucking stand there like a statue and take it and still get the ball somewhere. Because he was legitimately a very good quarterback in college. But yeah, that 2016 game, we were just overmatched. I worry we are here because we're missing dudes. Lachey is out.
Yeah.
Eric All's quite good, but it's obvious he's not 100% coming off the back surgery. And the backups are an unknown. Beyond garbage time against Western Michigan, we haven't got to see much. But if any position is going to be good backups for Iowa, it's 2. Number 1 is tight ends, at least on the offensive side. Tight ends, because Iowa, I think, is of this century tight end you. You could make an argument for a few other schools, but in terms of the last 10 to 15 years, I don't think you can. And I think so. The backups tight end should be fine because we recruit the same kind of guys. They have the similar level talent and coaching, so they should be fine. And running back, because we got a really good running backs coach in terms of like just knowing how to hit the hole. Not that we are recruiting that great at the position right now, but some of the guys were 3, 4-star guys, so that's not impossible that they could be competent for a game or two. Because it doesn't sound like our current running back situation is like that dire. It's ankle tweaks week to week kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But man, we are a little too thin on the defensive side, especially on the back 4. Like, they have shown some holes the last couple weeks where you wonder, is everybody communicating? Is everybody on the same page scheme-wise? Because normally they don't. Giving up big plays to Western Michigan does not give me confidence against Penn State. But you wonder, like, is Drew Aller going to try to, do a little too much? Is somebody going to go after Cooper DeJean and get bit? Because someone's going to.
Right.
And I wonder, is that going to be the Penn State game? Because, again, it's not impossible. If your defense can get you in some good positions, just takes 2 or 3 drives to make it a game by the fourth quarter. If the defense can do it, get some turnovers. They don't even have to score. They can get you some short fields. We've got a really good kicker to shorten the game up and make it a tighter one. It's not impossible. And I think the 15-point line is insane against Iowa. Like, I can't remember the last time they lost by 14 points, not counting the Ohio State game.
I think it's a high spread given the fact that Drew Aller hasn't blown the doors off of
he didn't against Illinois, and our defense is way better.
Yeah, I know a lot of his throws are to his running backs. He likes to spread it out, but particularly to the backs, right? That could be a problem.
That kills
against
us.
Iowa.
That kills us.
Yeah.
Because traditionally, there goes the 4-3.
Yep.
You can't do that against that. Like Purdue ran that kind of offense, and it destroyed our defense. He had multiple receivers go off for 200 yards a game against us.
So he could. I mean, it may not be. There may not be a need for him to throw for 300 yards. But with that said, though, I think it could easily become a special teams battle. Like, it could be a game where their offense doesn't show,
because the weather's not supposed to be great either. It's supposed to be that kind of wet, not overbearing rain, but kind of wet all day. Everything is wet, soaked kind of game. That kind of dries up maybe as the game goes on. But by then, you're slogging around and you're going to get a little more tired, It's a whiteout too, so that one, you wonder how does everybody on Iowa respond to that. But for most of the guys, it's not their first time,
Yep.
so that shouldn't be a huge deal. Because like we play Kinnick night games, like that's not that crazy of a difference between whiteout at Happy Valley. I think that's a little overblown, but I still don't see a win. I see this more 28 4, like maybe 28 in that high 20 low 30s range for Penn State versus maybe 21 for Iowa.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I went with Penn State here, man. I had to when I really think about like the injuries are noticeable for Iowa at this point, particularly on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah.
And that's going to I like I said, Penn State, I mean, they're scoring 40 points a game, but when you go and look at the numbers, you're like, wait, they're scoring 40 points a game and they're racking up 400 yards. But when you look at like Aller's not blowing the doors off of everybody, he's only thrown 4 touchdowns. It's just like, okay, well maybe they have the backups in to like, no, maybe the running backs are tearing it up. Yeah, the running backs have been okay, like they've been good, decent, but they're not like blowing the doors off people. You're like, okay, so what am I missing here? It's like, no, they're just a good team. Well, a good team. It's like, okay, maybe it's just the war of attrition that by the fourth quarter Iowa just can't hang.
That's most
That
likely what's going to happen. That's what, Iowa, that's what'll happen. Like the, 2015 Big Ten title game, like just ran out of dudes.
it's like 10-7 at the halftime, and you're like, okay, and then by the end of the late third quarter, Iowa just starts running out of gas. But particularly on the offensive side, just because lack of experience or just depth problems because of the injuries. Like it's what it feels like. So I went with Penn State here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But if Iowa wins,
So
get ready for those. Talk to your kids about undefeated Iowa.
Right, that would
remember
be
that shit.
yeah, yeah, man.
Like, if they pull it
So
off.
so this means that the next game is more than likely going to be the one that separates us here.
Yep.
Because we've got the same picks down the line until now, right? I
Yep.
think so.
So we got Ohio State at Notre Dame.
Yep.
For me, the undisputed game of the week. That is also a 6:30 game. We've got three
Yes.
6:30 games to be watching, so I'm gonna have multiple monitors going. At number 6, Ohio State at number 9, Notre Dame. 6:30 on NBC. Fusion. I talked a lot about the Iowa one, so you go for this one.
I think Notre Dame is the truth here, guys. I think Sam Hartman transferring over from Wake Forest has been a godsend. Yes, you can take that Notre Dame pun right down to South Bend and touchdown Jesus. Give him my quote. I think Notre Dame's just a little too much here for Ohio State. Now, I think we've seen sprinkles within the Ohio State offense that they just don't have, they just really haven't settled in offensively, in my opinion. Like they have so much talent that they can run up the score on lesser teams, but they just don't look as dynamic as they have in the past, like as monstrous on the offensive side of the football. And maybe it's because of the quarterbacking. But I think at this point they're going into South Bend and they're facing a really good team that has arguably one of the best offensive lines in the country.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very, very, very good quarterback in Sam Hartman. I know he's 24, 25 years old. He's like a Joe Burrow. He's going to elevate his stock probably into a late first rounder, early second rounder, just because there's just so many talented quarterbacks going into the draft this year. But I really like Notre Dame in this game, man. I can't like when I look at them, I'm like, okay. I think when we first opened up this show, I was like, two teams that I'm kind of shaky on, like, who are they? It's Penn State, like, are they really going to be as tough as we think they are? The other one was Notre Dame. I feel a lot more confident watching a lot of the film the last couple of weeks from Notre Dame. Like Hartman really has them in a really good rhythm offensively, and they, like I said, great offensive line, very good defense. I think Notre Dame is going to be they're going to be pushing for that for one of those 4 spots at the end of the year, man.
Agreed. Actually, I also picked Notre
Okay.
Dame, so we were in
All right.
lockstep this week. For me, like you said, it's just that they're unsettled on offense.
Yep.
Kyle McCord was only recently named the starter.
Yep.
I do wonder though, like they haven't been really punched in the mouth. That kind of like, what happens when you get hit kind of mentality.
Right.
Do they will that kind of kick them into gear? Because in some athletes' cases, that's what can get them going, right? Because they haven't really been challenged. And you wonder, is this the week where they're like, oh, wait a minute. We're Ohio State. We fucking got this.
Yeah.
And because Ryan Day is a great coach. You wonder, can they do that? I do think Notre Dame is too much for them, though. I think Notre Dame is at 9 is like, okay, voters, what the fuck are you smoking? Like, how are they 9?
Yeah.
They are clearly, they're that team this year. From what we've seen so far, like that's a team that's going to be a problem come the playoff because they are a complete team, which I did not see coming into the season, especially after last year. I was like, okay, is much like what we said about Oklahoma. You wonder after that first year doesn't quite hit all the right notes. And now that second season, they're storming out of the gate saying, no, Notre Dame, we're fucking here.
Yeah.
And they certainly are playing that way. So I think they're too much for Ohio State, but it's a non-con game. So it doesn't kill Ohio State's chances for the rest of the season.
Well,
Big Ten still all in front of them.
Yep.
And the playoff is too if they won the table.
If they run the table, they could still be in the playoff, man. And I think you point out a really good point with Ryan Day. I think Devin Brown's the other quarterback, right? That's the freshman.
Sounds right.
Devin Brown. I think if he feels, and let me get this straight, McCourt has not been bad. It just when you look at them, it's like okay, they have played lesser opponents. They barely beat Indiana to open up the season by 20 points. Youngstown State
barely by 20. Like
I know, right? But if you're talking about Indiana, but then they go Youngstown State, it was 35-7. It's like I think we've gotten to the point where we've gotten used to.
we were used to seeing that 50 spot.
Yeah, Ohio State doing what Oklahoma does, run up the score to make sure that they pad their rankings, right? And then Western Kentucky, 63 points. That was a really great showing, but at the same time, it's like it's Western Kentucky. Like this, we need a test for them because I just don't think that they're I don't think they're there yet. I don't think Ohio State's there yet. Now, if they go into South Bend and give them a really great showing this week, that'll turn some heads back to Ohio State. They go in and they get blown out. It's like, yeah, we all thought, we'll have the benefit of hindsight come Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we knew this about Ohio State, but and that's the tough thing. And like you brought up Notre Dame being ranked number 9. It's tough right now because when you go in and look at the rankings, I mean, the only real movement that's been happening is Texas. And the only reason why they moved up from 4 to 3 was because Florida State barely eked out a win last week.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason why. And that was the other team that was like, if I had to pick me a handful of teams, are they frauds or are they unsure? It was Penn State, Notre Dame, and Florida State. I really liked what I saw from Florida State the first week. Now I'm starting to get a little like, okay, is this where I thought they would be?
Yeah, how much of that was fool's gold?
Yeah, fool's gold that first week. Okay, USC, I got to see them in Pac-12 play.
Yeah, I want to see them against somebody that on offense has a pulse.
Right.
You know?
And so I think Notre Dame over the next week or so could be shooting up in the rankings.
Yeah.
I think so.
I believe so. I think you'll
obviously
shoot up.
Obviously, if they beat Ohio State, they could easily just vault everybody else.
Well, they'll go top 5 if they beat Ohio State.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. I mean, here's the crazy thing, though. Colorado's at 19, Oregon's at 10. If Colorado beats Oregon, goes into Oregon and beats Oregon, they have to vault everybody, right?
Well, again, that's a dependent on, like, if Notre Dame wins, they're going to be higher in Colorado.
Yeah, okay.
And Texas isn't going to fall back, and Georgia's not going to fall back.
I mean, Ole Miss will flip with Alabama.
Yeah, they won't move much.
No,
they'll probably be more. They'll probably move to like the 10-ish spot.
Yeah.
Because a road win at Alabama is not nothing.
Yeah.
So, but hey, we 5 for 5, same picks. So I guess I'm not making up any ground this week.
Okay. Well, no, the point differential is a tiebreaker. So
true, but I'm still not making up any point. Totals.
Points. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So. Man, I mean, yeah, this is a tough thing when we both watch enough college football, like the really good games. We kind of like, hey, we're going to be a little more.
I really did toy with putting my honorable mention of the week. I really wanted to put this in there, but I'm like, I don't think everybody in our pool is going to watch this game. They should, but they're not gonna. And that is the Tupac Championship between Oregon State and Washington State.
Oregon State, Washington.
6 o'clock Fox, so another evening window. Which will be that's afternoon for them because it's 4 p.m. for them. But it's the last two in the Pac-12 standing going at it. It's at Washington State. the only time they play this year, and probably for the rest of the Pac-12's existence, unless
Yep.
both of them go on an absolute tear and meet back up in because they don't do divisions, do they? Shit, they do divisions.
I don't think they
Are they
do.
divisionless, so they could meet up based on record again, kind of like the Big 12. I think so.
No, they don't have
Yeah, they
a
do kind of that round robin like kind of thing where
like the
you
Big
could
12.
technically have a rematch.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's not impossible because they're both good teams. But I think Oregon State for me would be my pick there. That's my road win. They're the better ranked team. Washington State, had a great win against Wisconsin, but I think Oregon State's a better team than Wisconsin.
Mhm.
So they should pull that off.
I like the quarterback at Oregon State. So
And
if this was
I
our
like Washington State's guy. Like he was carving up Wisconsin pretty good.
yeah. If we had to pick, if this was going to be like our pickup, I would still pick Oregon State
Yeah,
too.
I think
So
we'd still have the same ones. But
yeah,
I'm definitely going to want to watch, at least have that one kind of in the periphery since it's not a pick
yeah,
'em game. But I still
yeah,
want to watch it because, I mean, this is the two teams where you got to go. Everyone in college football is like, God, these guys got fucked.
yeah,
Like they're getting screwed.
yeah.
Like, and it's not just the program, like the kids, like they're playing there. Like they came to win big Pac-12 championships and they're not going to get that chance. That sucks.
Yeah. Ugh.
And I wonder with this court case because they got the whole injunction and everything going on. How crazy would it be if before the season's end, the judge rules in their favor and they say, no, the championship that was this weekend, right? Like that was what is it? That was the 23rd of September, and the winner's the Pac-12 champion. Because if the judge rules none of the people leaving get to vote on anything,
Right.
they could. That'd be pretty cool. I don't think it'll happen, and it would be incredibly petty. But damn if it's not deserved if they pulled that off.
Would they be silly about it and brand it the Pac-2 championship?
Oh yeah, you know they
Yeah.
would. Because like the whole
Oh
situation with
man.
Kavaloff, like was that how you say his last name? Klavikov, whatever.
Klavikov, yeah.
Like trying to essentially pilfer and like he's backing the people leaving the conference.
Yep.
Like, dude, you're the commissioner of this fucking conference. There's
Yep.
2 members in it right now, but you're still their commissioner, not for the 10 leaving.
Oh man,
What are you doing?
there's not a bigger douchebag than George Klavikov because he came in a media guy thinking he could do whatever he can to run this league because this was another
And
case
he thought
that
he had the Big 12 over a barrel.
well, not just over the barrel. He thought he was going to make a fortune, and then he sat on like they knew there were talks of teams leaving last year,
To
right?
go to the
Just like
pack. Yeah.
yeah, and he was just like, nope, we're gonna hold everything. We're gonna leave everything as is because I'm going to present this awesome TV deal. And they're like, all right. And then teams are like, we want out. Colorado's like, I want out. Other teams like, fuck it, we want out. Oh, by the way, like our grant of rights isn't as like ironclad as you thought it was, Klavikov. So there was another thing he botched, right? And then he's like, hold on, guys, let's present this deal. I don't know what happened because they didn't have a deal in place. And then the next day, they're all meeting, and apparently they walked out after 30 minutes because
Yeah,
they're
they just
like,
laughed
this is
kind of in their face and
like,
we're done.
this is like, really, dude? Like, he promised, like, well, what was it, like 15 to $20 million or
Yeah.
something stupid. And they're like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, we're done here. We're out. There's never been a better, like, well, no, I can't say that because I think Elon Musk and Twitter has been the
Yeah.
greatest business botch in the history of American business. But when you look back in like some of the biggest botches in just business and sports, what happened with the Pac-12 is one of what
Yeah, you
Klavikov
thought the
did.
Big East was a shit show?
Oh
Oh,
no, no,
you ain't
no,
seen nothing on the
no,
Pac-12,
no,
man.
no, no.
Like, wow.
Like we're talking about 100-year-old like legacy conference
Yeah, with
that
some of
was
the most prestigious universities in the
that
country.
was picked apart in days because their commissioner just I don't when you look at the other side of the spectrum, what Yarmark did over at the Big 12 was very like they're not an elite conference, but it was
And they
commendable
know
what
they're
he
not
did.
trying to be.
No.
That's the thing. They know what they're going for. They have their
But
vision and they're hitting it.
but but he what he did was he made it a very entertaining conference for baseball and basketball too,
Yep.
and other sports. Like they may catch other teams by surprise getting into the playoffs when they expand to 12 next year in football. But they're going to be a conference that
And in
you'll
20,
see them
30
in that.
years, when football starts to taper off because high schoolers are playing it less,
Yep.
they're in a really good position.
Yep.
'Cause I honestly don't think in 100 years we'll be playing football at the level we do in this
Neither do
country.
I. I said 30 years. I said 30 years from now, football is going to become a dying sport just because
I
of
think you're going
the
to see not like
political.
Power 5 teams, but like I don't know if UNI keeps playing football that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like your lower level schools. And that might shore up, the depth of the top level for a time.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're going to be able to have that many kids eventually if the enrollment continues to dip. So, the teams that are like betting on basketball a little bit, that's not the worst idea in the world.
Right. And so when you look at the Big 12, it's built for
Oh,
basketball,
dude, that
baseball,
Big 12 tournament is going to be absolutely fucking
right?
insane.
Right.
Oh, if they keep it in Kansas City,
Baylor, U of A. I mean, just look at the conference and just look at it. Kansas State, Baylor, Texas Tech, U of H, like,
Arizona,
Arizona. It's like
they
that
got
is
they got
legacy.
some teams, dude.
That is legacy college basketball right there.
Yeah,
And you look at a lot of those teams, like they're not like continuous championship in baseball, but there are teams in there that are really good year over year in college baseball. So that's great. Like I'm happy that you, I I didn't know much about you, Mark. All I knew is like the first year he came in, it was like, okay, it can't get any worse. And then all of a sudden, a couple months ago, he's like, you know what? We're going to Texas and Oklahoma's leaving. Okay, we're going to rebuild this conference. Boom, 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 boom. Like he went all in. It's like, hey, it may not be the most dynamic football conference, but we're gonna make up for it elsewhere. Because when it comes to like those TV deals from in March Madness, like a lot of our teams are going to be in the mix for national
yeah.
championships in basketball. And so, like, hey, man, if you can't do it in football, fucking do it in basketball. So, yeah, it's really sad what happened to the Pac-12. It really has been. And I am going to watch a little bit of that game just because, like you said, this is the end. We're nearing the end, and it sucks because the last season of the Pac-12, there are a lot of really good teams over there. A
Yeah,
lot
you
of really
talk
good.
about a last dance, like, damn,
Yeah.
dude. They got a lot of great talent at the quarterback position. I believe they
Yep.
have the most of the Power 5 conferences in top 25.
Yep.
Like, they got some really good teams that are going to give people problems either in the playoff or just postseason, kind of
Yeah.
interconference bowl game.
Yep.
Like, that's going to be really fun to watch.
When Washington State joined the top 25, they officially became the conference with the most teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Top 25.
Good conference.
That's
And it sucks to see
that's
it die.
yeah. It died with a whimper, man. Like with a whimper. It didn't even go down like with some incredible
Yeah, like somebody popped a balloon. God dang it.
no. This is what we're gonna have. Like yeah, it's just gonna go down with a whimper. But hey, man, hopefully at least one of the teams in the Big 12 Pac-12 get to represent in the playoff this year. That would be nice.
I imagine it'll happen, just given the level of quarterback play. If we get a one-loss Pac-12 championship, they're in the playoff.
And then we have a Heisman winner from the Pac-12. That was just icing on the cake right there, man.
And it's not like you want to give you a shout. You said Penix, man.
I told you.
He is having a year.
Yes, even without an running game, he is having a year, man. That was my guy, man. My gut told me he was going to have a year. So, oh man,
Well, I think it's Penix technically. I just said it the wrong way on purpose. But
it's
hey,
going to be a really good couple weeks as we're getting into conference.
Yeah,
play
now we're into the meat of it. We get some real interesting matchups, great storylines. The clarity of the season really comes into play.
Yep.
That's what we're going to do here for our week 4 kind of preview. We'll be back next week talking about the after of week 4. Some of the big games we have, like a bunch of top 25 games to sort through, plus our thoughts on week 5 games coming up next week. You can follow us, of course, individually. I am at Mr. Wartburg. He is at It's Mr. Fusion. You can follow the show at TwoBackSet on Twitter, and I'm going to keep calling it Twitter because if he wants to bitch about pronouns, I'm going to call it Twitter. He doesn't get to tell me the name of it. And let's see, anything else? Anything else I'm missing? I don't think so. No? We should probably get out of here.
Let's have a great weekend of college football, guys.
Get some food and watch some football. Yep. See ya.